I remember going to San Lorenzo. This is centenary year, so it's 2008. It was a Libertadores game, and I've seen where it is. There's an underground station quite close, not that far away. So I go to the underground station and walk in. I'm thinking, why am I the only one? Why is there no one going to this game? Why am I the only one following this route? And then I find out because it takes you right into the middle of a Villa Miseria, a favela, a shanty town, which I think is a Paraguayan one, the Paraguayans and Bolivians and so on. Now, obviously, I've got experience of this in Rio, so this doesn't freak me out, and I wander through, and I'm totally unmolested, and it's just people there, doing people things. But I was struck by the fact that no one else was taking this route, and on the way home after the game, which was dreadful, appalling game. Although the songs were fabulous. Ya lo ves, no somos ni Boca ni River Plate. Great song.
Yeah.
Fabulous song. And they kept it up for ages and ages and ages. On the way home, it was on a bus. There's people singing, I'm happy. And then someone on the other side of us said, me too. I'm happy. Me too. Despite everything, I'm happy. And I thought that kind of summed up the experience.
Yeah.
So, what are your experiences of being there in that stadium?
Well, exactly that, because you're not, especially as a newcomer in that country. When I was, first started going over 10 years ago, didn't speak much Spanish, and you mentioned the area and the sprawling Visha sort of shanty town slum right next to the stadium, one of the biggest in Argentina. The San Lorenzo generally don't play at night unless they have to because of cup competitions, because of the security of fans and the kind of notoriety of the area. So you're told not to go, so you do have that trepidation. But you're rewarded for it. You get to the game, and even if the game isn't great, it's like being at a concert. Because, like you say, the songs roll on as they do in most Argentine clubs. But the San Lorenzo fan base does have a lot of fame for it because they take it very seriously. Boedo, that barrio where they're from, was historically a neighborhood of writers, of poets, of musicians, of tango dancers. There was the famous Grupo de Boedo, a kind of a literary collective which put themselves against the Grupo de Florida, which had Jorge Luis Borges and all the kind of well-known writers, but kind of more associated with the upper echelons of society, a bit more avant-garde, a bit more elitist. The Grupo de Boedo was very much aligned with kind of more sort of socialist causes, sort of grassroots level. So it had that, and so people argue, and I think there's definitely something in it, that this sort of cultural background of the neighbourhood sort of ended up imbuing the club and their fans who take songwriting very seriously and would think whatever's happening on the pitch, we're going to sing our songs, and they're not chants like we kind of rapidly sort of bark out here in England and Europe. It's song and verse. There's 3 verses and a chorus sometimes. That song Against River, for example, it's a takedown about how you only go to the stadium when you're winning. How can you understand? These are lyrics in a song. How can you understand passion if you only watch it on TV? We know your stadium only came from funding for the military government. San Lorenzo is here to teach what passion is, and it's on and on. And everyone's singing it, and you look at some sort of tattooed, potentially drugged up kind of fan behind the goal, barely watching the game. You think, what's his story? And he's singing along in this very melodic way. You think it's incredible. And yeah, as I say, you are rewarded for making that journey, because a lot of people tell you not to go. I was keen to sort of give a voice to that neighbour in the book, the neighbours of the Visha, of that massive slum, because they're stigmatised somewhat, definitely by tourists, but potentially even more so by the Argentines, who like to kind of
Yeah.
pretend they're not there. They say don't go in. And it is almost like an entrance. It's almost not. It doesn't just filter into the rest of the city. You know when you're at the edge and you're inside, and it is another world. But the vast majority of people living there are just normal, hardworking people, and a lot of San Lorenzo fans. There was a player, Hector Vichalba, in the squad who won San Lorenzo's only Libertadores in 2014, who grew up in the Visha. Kind of, you can see the stadium from these kind of dilapidated kind of sort of ad hoc homes that they're set up in the Visha, and he made that journey and succeeded at the highest level with San Lorenzo. And there's people who go to the games, and San Lorenzo does have a decent kind of social purpose still and social conscious, and they lend its facilities and its grounds to the neighbours of that Visha. So yeah, it's again, you got to be wary, but it's a good thing to treat them as normal residents of the city and not let it put you off going to San Lorenzo, for sure.
You know what it reminded me of, and this was very powerful for me. You're too young for this, Will, but it reminded me of the music that we had, kind
I'm
of,
also too young for it.
oh yeah, late 70s, early 80s, which I learnt much more from the music than ever did going to school. There's a jam song, for example, called "Little Boy Soldiers," which is all about growing up working class in an imperialist country, and you're learning all of this from the songs. I wasn't a massive Dexys fan, but some of the stuff that Dexys were doing right at the start, it was like really, really deep. It was really profound, and it was also popular entertainment, and that was my education, and that was the connection I felt listening to the San Lorenzo, because it's beautiful, isn't it? It's beautiful. It works as music, and it works on a level of educational identity as well. It's a very powerful thing, I think.